Okay, we're back. We're live. It's Friday. Huh, wow. Thank you. We're here with Kirsten Turner. She's a sustainability person, and more specifically, a member, a founder, a big person in Sustainability Partners, Inc.
No, I'm not the founder, but I'm definitely a willing partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to take, honestly, Kirsten, all things considered, I'd like to take the next couple of hours or so and just talk about your CV. I would have printed it out, but I didn't have enough paper.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't. That would be very embarrassing. I'd much rather talk about sustainability.
All right, a mini CV then.
Okay.
Where'd you go to school? You went to school good. You went to school good.
Well, I was very fortunate that I had a scholarship to represent the United States at the United World College in Britain. So that started my interest in international development, living and working with people from over 80 countries, most of whom were in developing nations with increasing scarcity of resources.
Did it change you?
Absolutely. The United World Colleges change anyone. That kind of experience, which is both in studying and working together, but also in giving back to the community, which is a big part of the curriculum. So you share everything, you learn everything. That's why I went back and worked there as a teacher as well. My husband and I couldn't donate to the colleges the way we would want to have. So we gave a year of service, and he taught world religions, and I helped start the conflict resolution program there and contributed to the wellness program, and we had a phenomenal experience.
Wow. When was that?
2001.
Not that long ago.
So we were on campus when 9/11 happened. And we had...
Gee, that must have been interesting to see people react.
Fascinating, because we had Palestinians, we had Israelis, we had, of course, as I said, over 80 countries. So there was a lot of personal feeling from various directions around the whole incident. And the hardest part was witnessing the fear of some of our Muslim students and faculty and venturing out that day and for months beyond.
About backlash, yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, in the community that we were in New Mexico, they were very hospitable and open and loved the college, and there really was no problem.
You know, it's funny though, I was listening to something on NPR on the way in about the reduction of the number of Christians, Christian sects, not like Christians in the West, but ancient Christians in the Middle East. The number is going down, and they're under pressure, and and ISIS kills them on sight and all that.
That's right.
That's really terrible. But what it makes you feel is that, just my reaction is that 9/11 was the beginning of a new time. It changed everything. I said that when I saw the second plane hit. I said, this changes everything. You agree?
It did. And luckily, it can also have positive effects. And I think one of the things that came out of 9/11 that was positive for our interest in sustainability is that it highlighted scarcities around the world and where conflict has broken out. As the U.S. Army slide that we have used in Sustainability Partners ever since we began working with the Army and the U.S. Department of Defense, is showing the nexus, the exact correlation with an overlay slide between where their greatest scarcity resources in the world are and where conflicts break out. And this is why you had the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, I think it was 2005, perhaps earlier, during the Bush administration, state on their own independently that sustainability was the #1 national security concern. And so they created a Joint Chiefs resolution that each military service would be working towards sustainability. And luckily, we have all those services in Hawaii, and we have benefited from that commitment. And I was fortunate to be able to be a part of some of the strategic planning and sustainable development work that the military did early on here.
Yeah.
But that's history now.
Yeah. But, I mean, I agree with you that it made us, it's like Thomas Friedman's book, The Flat World on steroids. All of a sudden, we got to know that it was all connected.
That's right.
And the economics were connected, and the scarcity was connected. And if you have scarcity here, it's going to have an effect there. So don't think that if you're here, you can escape the scarcity there.
Right.
But listen, I have to ask you a very burning, important question.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. For this discussion, in the four corners of this discussion, you're going to hate this question. Maybe you're going to love this question. What is sustainability?
Well, I will tell you that intuitively, I always understood that we needed to have sustainable development. We didn't call it that. But from early on with the work that I was doing overseas in the International Trade Administration and helping develop export industries for developing nations. And then even when I was working with the Office of Economic Development with Joanne Yukimura under her administration in the late 80s, we created the first overall economic development plan for Kauai. And that was the result of many focus groups. And I was lucky to be the one to pull it together and write it, but it reflected the community's entire perspective on where Kauai should go forward. And I will tell you that it was published in 92. It started in 90. That plan reflected
23 years ago.
That's right. That plan reflected sustainability as we know it today, in terms of the understanding that if we do not care for and maintain our resources today, there will be not enough resources for people to survive tomorrow. And I think that's the best and simplest for people to be able to grasp definition of sustainability. It's the planning and use of resources such that they can replenish themselves for further generations to survive and flourish. And so in 92, we created that overall economic development plan, but we didn't call it based on sustainability principles. It's interesting that
What did you call it?
It was an overall economic development plan based on the community's vision for their future. And people, I think, in Hawaii have that intuitive understanding of systems and the intricate fabric between the environmental integrity and our quality of life, and understanding, what is now commonly referred to as the triple bottom line, which is looking at the important nexus, where we find our sustainability is the nexus between focus on profits for economic viability, focus on community for social justice and quality of life issues, and also focus on the environment and its flourishing. So the Venn diagram where those cross is really where you find that sweet spot of sustainability. And I think it's very important that be taught as what is a basic understanding of political economy in today's educational system.
It's not being taught.
No.
Oh, okay, resources. You said resources, so you pointed from sustainability to resources.
Okay.
Qu'est-ce que c'est resources?
Well, the interesting thing that happened in 92, Natural Capitalism was written by Paul Hawken and the folks at the Rocky Mountain Institute, Amory and Hunter Levins, who I'm sure you've heard about if you haven't met. And they published Natural Capitalism, which explained a very key component to sustainability. And this is also a basis that we should be teaching in elementary school about how our systems work. And that is that everything has a cost. And that when we're looking at whether it's our household budget or our corporate budget, if we factor in the opportunity cost of depleted resources, then we'll have a true understanding of what our real costs are for doing business, for our recreation, for our development direction in general, for everything that we do. So resource depletion should have an attached cost. On the other side, of course, resource use. And so if we look at that, which was very well written out in natural capitalism, then we'll have an understanding that will allow us to do the next thing, which is make a basic accounting mechanism for daily life and everything we do based on life cycle costing. And we don't do that today either. I believe we need to change our accounting systems to be absolutely fundamentally life cycle costing accounting mechanisms.
Before we get to that, resources.
Yes.
What's a resource?
Resources: air, resources: water. It is all of the natural components that make up our world and what we draw our sustenance from.
Okay, and where does that intersect with localness and self-reliance?
Okay, that's a good segue. It's well known, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, that we import most of our food, we use petroleum for most of our electricity, and those are dependencies that we have created that have shifted entirely from where, for example, the Native Hawaiians, the systems that they had in place before European contact. And so our resources are being imported at the same time that they're using up the local resources. And when the nexus you're talking about is local sustenance and sustainability, is that correct?
Well, I guess I'm thinking of multiple things at the same time,
Okay.
but it's like, for example, agriculture. How important is local agriculture in your view of the resources we need to protect?
Okay.
And
Well-
we are an island, and traditionally, think of Australia, New Zealand, those islands have learned with great benefit to be self-reliant. Changes the culture, changes the way they see things, and we're an island too. So therefore, I see it as connected somehow between self-reliance as an island, or in general, and localness, which means that you use what you have first, or rather you preserve and use what you have first.
Absolutely, and that actually ties really well to my comment about needing to change the paradigm. The understanding of using local resources is trying to shift that life cycle cost of our economy, because there's obviously a cost involved in bringing things in.
Shipping.
Yes, shipping or air, as many of our products are brought in. And so the cost for those we know are the cost of transportation and also the environmental cost. So when we take the two together, we get a full life cycle cost. The importance of reinvigorating our local agriculture is obviously to reduce the amount that we're importing. So we're reducing the impact on the environment, and we're reducing the outflow of our funds from our pockets and from circulation within our economy to elsewhere. And so we need to do more to sustain our local resources for that triple bottom line reasoning, which is we need to empower local jobs in order to focus on being able to develop local resources. We need to have those resources ready for our use, and we need to focus on caring for them so that we're not depleting them for future generations.
And we change the accounting in the process.
And we should change how we account for
How
them.
we see, the assets and the liabilities, how we see the
Exactly.
income and the expenses. But let's take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, I want to ask you exactly how far down that path are we? And if I went out in the street, and found somebody on 4th Street Mall to discuss this with, would he have any idea? And if not, how do we give him the education he needs to understand this?
Well, I would say it depends on if he watches your show.
We're going to go further than that. That's Kirsten Turner. She's with Sustainability Partners, Inc. Here on Sustainable Hawaii. We're talking about, is sustainability in Hawaii a myth? We haven't gotten to that yet, but we will. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
They got to be fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back, and we solved it all during the break. It was amazing how that's the problem here in ThinkTech. We solve everything during the break. P.S. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, you are free to do that. We have Twitter. We have this big monitor where we repeat anything that comes in on our Twitter feed. So our Twitter address, in case you care, is ThinkTechHI. ThinkTechHI. Send us a note, and we'll read it, and we'll give you credit. And we'll tell you it was a good idea, well, if it is. So Kirsten, so what about that? I mean, we're talking during the break about dividing the population up into those who are savvy about these things, who go to the conferences, who read the books, who spot the articles in the newspaper, if they read the newspaper, and then there are the people who don't, and it's not part of their lives. They're out there in the highway in gas-guzzling SUVs. They just want to do it like they did it before. They're not, on a path to anywhere close to sustainability. And if you want to achieve sustainability, you have got to get the community behind it.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to do, even in an island. You think that because people understood the nature of being on an island, a special cultural quality of being on an island, that they would warm to this? Not necessarily so.
Well, I would actually push back there. I would argue that in Hawaii, people are much more oriented towards a sustainable lifestyle because there's such a connection with our environment in our daily lives. And so while downtown is growing and the high rises are growing, you still have a huge focus on getting out and enjoying the reason that so many visitors come here. So we're better off here. We have an opportunity here to use that mindset and the way in which people are raised to interact with the environment to further our goals, which is one reason why I think the Clean Energy Initiative and many of our other initiatives, the Green Growth, Hawaii Green Growth and others, have drawn national attention.
And a lot of interest in the state.
Yeah.
And yet, when I drive on the freeway,
Yes.
I see all those fossil cars, and I don't see a lot of, in fact, there was a piece in the paper a few days ago about how electric vehicle sales are down. Oh, this hurts. Yeah. Before we go further on that, though, we have a Twitter. How do you like that?
Okay.
Must have been something you said. Mark Ward, he writes us Twitter. In an age where the success of American business is often only defined by the dollar, will it require tragedy to reverse the paradigm? Wow, interesting question. You want to handle that now or later?
Boy.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, tragedy is certainly a catalyst, and it's unfortunate, but it's true, as we mentioned with 9/11. And in crises, people sit up and take note. Is it necessary? Hopefully not. I'm a glasses half full person. So I'd like to think that some of the things that we're doing are beginning to shift people's perspectives and way of thinking. I want to mention, because you brought up this issue of how do we change people to get out of their gas guzzling cars. I think we go back to the education issue. I think it's fundamental that those people who are driving those cars today, if they had been taught throughout their school-aged years how that is detrimental and understanding the very basics of the impacts of their individual actions, they might make different choices. I think the Blue Planet survey that Jeff Mikulina recently announced at the Clean Energy Day, in which he said that the majority of people surveyed said they'd pay more for clean electricity, demonstrates, that commitment. I think that education then is one of the keys, but we have to also capture the people who are driving those gas guzzlers. And another thing that I saw at the Clean Energy Day, which was when you handed out the awards with Sharon and Mike Hamnet, was the award to the really dynamic young woman, I'm forgetting her name.
Helen Y.
Helen Y.
She's great.
The work that she is doing out in the community to bring this discussion to a very digestible level to the average commuter and other energy user within the households, so that they understand their direct impacts and also the benefits that they receive when they employ energy efficiency. You have to have, in other words, a both-and approach. So education at every level, but also community outreach and action, and more shows like yours. I mean, I'd love to see your show being reached at a much greater level to a broader number of people. Right now, I think it takes some endeavor to find ThinkTech, and those of us who have benefited for years. But we need to make things like this, right at the ready, at people's fingertips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
Yes.
We haven't stopped for a minute working on that. But and you're coming on the show. This is very important that you be here.
Oh, I'm honored.
And you can express this. But it goes back for a minute, if I could just touch on the educational point. You know that old Hawaiian thing about you can give a man a fish and then he'll have a meal, or you can teach him how to fish and then he can go fish for his own fish.
That's also biblical.
Thank you. Well, a lot of Hawaiian stuff is biblical,
They're not incompatible.
No. So it just strikes me that I think Helen Y. walks on water. And she's done incredible things. She's changed the way people think, in the world that she touches, much faster than it would otherwise change. But I think there's also a fundamental educational issue here. We can't just give them the conclusions. We need to teach them how to think those conclusions through themselves. How do you do that here in Hawaii?
Well, systems thinking, teaching how systems work. And that's not just technical computer systems, but that's natural systems. And so we have a steep hill to climb to help people understand that. There are so many modalities in which we can do that, though. We can reach people, and we are. The visitor industry has taken up the baton in some of our major hotels. They're doing that education on their visitor channel, and they're also, the simple placards in the hotel rooms telling us not to use the towels because of the need to save water. I think there are so many avenues to reach out to people. It's just we have to engage more folks doing that reaching out and more avenues.
Well, is it political? I mean, here, I'll tell you my thinking, and I want to ask you about this. So Kaka'ako, half a mile from here, Kaka'ako, where the millennials live, where there are so many, budding institutions of millennialism, okay, and where you can find a lot of the thinking, you know, that
Yeah.
we're talking about. But, you know, immediately adjacent are condominium buildings where condominiums go in, I'm not kidding, for $100 million that nobody on the street will ever afford, or their children's children. You say, how, now, while there are people protesting for arcane reasons, I believe, the TMT on the Big Island, okay, why is there nobody protesting the loss of the core neighborhood of our city? It's happening while we're sitting here, you know. Why are the millennials, you know, kind of turning in on a smaller vision when the larger vision is right across the street? Where do we go wrong here?
That's $1 million question, and I'm not sure I'm capable of answering that, but I do think that we have a real crisis of values. And it's, you know, one of the things that my husband preaches all the time.
He's a minister.
He's a minister, and he also runs Camp Mokuleia, and he demonstrates this in the programming that he provides for participants at the camp, both young and old, is teaching the value of caring for one another and caring for the environment. And
it's related.
we have had in the last generations, and one might argue the last century, a focus on, you know, individual gain. And we really need to reinstill that understanding, and it is a very Native Hawaiian perspective of ohana, and that we are all related, we are one family, and if we begin to understand the impacts we have on one another, that we can then engage in more value-based decision-making.
Isn't that, you know what we talk about here in our little ministry here? Hadn't thought of it in those terms.
It is. It's
We
a
talk
mission.
about the common good.
Yes.
We talk about, it's really the same thing. It's about people not living in their kuleana. It's not living in silos, not being self-interested, rising above self-interest and thinking of the community in general. And when I say community, it's every community. It's humanity, I think. And that's a hard row because people, as you say, you know, it goes back to the robber barons in the late 19th century. People are self-interested. They want more than the next guy. They want to compete for their piece of the pie. And you have to change some really fundamental thought process in order to get where you and I both want to go.
I think the key is in understanding what is enough. You know, you and I, certainly have enough, plenty. And if we all understand what is the basic requirement for a rich life, and we understand that everyone deserves the same, I think that there will be a better approach to caring for the resources that we use and for the people that we interact with.
Okay, now when we come back from this break, I'm going to be asking you exactly how we do that. With the left foot, right foot, what are the steps we take?
A lot of prayer.
And a lot of politics.
Yes.
Politics and prayer. I think there was a song in Oklahoma. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break. Kirsten Baumgart Turner and me. Kirsten's with Sustainability Partners, Inc., and this is Sustainability Hawaii, so it comes together. And we're asking ourselves rhetorically, is sustainability in Hawaii real or a myth? We'll see more when we come back.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world. And we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Aloha, how you doing? I'm Gordo the Tech Czar, here on ThinkTech Hawaii, where we co-host Hibachi Talk, where we talk about technology and bring in all kinds of cool guests. Also, my co-host with me today is
Andrew the security guy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching ThinkTech Hawaii, and thanks for watching Hibachi Talk. We also have Angus.
And you there, lad? It's Angus. I bring in all kinds of wee things. Oh, look, you see my lips moving.
Okay, we're back. We're live, really live, with Kirsten Baumgart Turner. And we're talking about Sustainability Partners, Inc. and sustainability in Hawaii, and how real is it, and to what extent could it be a myth? So I guess I want to give you, room to talk about what you brought here. So let's take a kind of hiatus and talk about the books you brought and why you brought them and what you want to convey to people about those books.
Well, as I mentioned, reading Natural Capitalism helped me to put into a intellectual paradigm the sustainability thinking and systems thinking that I already felt intuitively. The other thing that really helped was my business partners, Mary and Brian Natras, wrote a book called The Natural Step for Business. It's about wealth ecology and the evolutionary corporation. And this came out the same year as Natural Capitalism. And Mary and Brian were actually old friends of mine. Mary was a classmate of my husband's and mine at Yale when we were all in graduate school. And the Natural Step for Business was taking the natural step, which was developed with Paul Hawken and others, and applying it to businesses, helping them to understand how do you apply this theory of natural capital and putting value to the opportunity cost of depleted resources, and how do you apply life cycle costing to improve the economic bottom line, but also that sweet spot where economics, community, and environment intersect, which is sustainability. So reading this book and getting together with my partners and then asking if I would like to do some work along this line in Hawaii really changed my life. And this book...
Hold it up so we can... Okay, good job.
With a smile.
Okay, so, and I can get that book on Amazon?
Yes, you can. Okay. And also on our website at sustainabilitypartners.com.
Okay.
So that book, Mary and Brian worked with Interface Carpet Company, and I think you've heard of the work that they did in recycling carpets. It was one of the biggest carpet companies in the world. They also worked with several other corporations, some hotels, and boy, I'm forgetting all the others. And this is a case study of how the implementation of that sustainability paradigm helped the company way improve its bottom line. And so at the same time, you have these two books coming out. And as I said, these are the things that we need to be teaching a la Helen Y at the elementary level.
Now, she has plenty of work left.
Yeah.
I mean, she has to go from whatever level it is to another level and another level.
Right. And by the way, you do have, when you talk, one thing I want to make sure is I'm an optimist also about sustainability in Hawaii. While I don't believe that you can necessarily achieve 100% sustainability because our lifestyle has adapted such that we're always going to be dependent on inputs from the mainland. We can certainly improve that balance sheet. And you do have examples in the schools here. And my husband was chaplain at Punahou School, and my children went there. And Punahou created a tremendous sustainability program. And as you know, the Omidyars built the kindergarten, first grade structure that was the first LEED Gold education building in Hawaii. So, and there are many more examples beyond that now. And so you you do have an introduction of this in education in Hawaii. It's just not pervasive yet.
We have to make it pervasive.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I went to, you talked about Blue Planet. I went to a play that was at the Honolulu Theater for Youth a couple of years ago. We made a movie of it. It was called Reuse, Recycle, and something else. And these kids were, you know, very young kids. They were third grade, maybe fourth grade, and the place was filled with them, and they were so happy holding hands. And when they walked, it was a musical, if you could treat this as a musical.
Yeah.
When they walked out, they were singing the songs that the play had delivered to them. And I said to myself, you know, it was pretty quick that they learned the message of reuse, recycle in the space of an hour, and they were singing the songs, and they would go home and talk to their parents.
That's right.
And this would insinuate, you know, the possibility of new thoughts in that family and
Absolutely.
in that community. And so, it, you know, went a long way. I think it was a high leverage on that play that Hank Rogers did. So that's what we need to do. We need to hit it
Absolutely.
wherever we can.
Absolutely. Our children are our best teachers.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
for the parents. The other thing that you mentioned very early on in this discussion is that we have scarcity, and we are going to have more scarcity, and we are going to feel the pinch of scarcity going forward.
Absolutely.
And even, I mean, to the extent that we don't, you know, autonomously teach our kids and our community about this, there will be factors that will teach us the hard way. That will come, and it will remind us that we better get on board with this. And I mean, I'm not wishing for it, but I think it's part of the process.
No, absolutely, and that's comes back to the question about crises, you know, creating the shift in the paradigm. But I think people are beginning to sit up and take notice. Of course, the oil shock, the increase in the gas prices created a lot of change in our behaviors. Unfortunately, you see some slipping back, as you mentioned, with the electric vehicle lower sales. But I have a theory on that too.
Please.
I think that might be because we haven't kept up with charging stations. I have an electric vehicle, of course, and I've had a biodiesel, 100% biodiesel use on, you know, we went out and bought a used VW so that we could take advantage of the King's biodiesels. And
Cool. They must be tickled by that.
well,
This is Bob and Kelly King, who
Right.
make biodiesel and been, you know, instrumental in that part of the clean energy movement.
and we were one of their early customers. We drive all the way to the 76 station over here to make sure we get it filled up. But we also invested in an electric vehicle, and increasingly, you can't get it charged. Right now, I'm not charging it where, you know,
No.
because we did have an increase in electric vehicles, and what we don't have are
Charging
enough
stations.
charging stations, and we didn't think ahead about the taking off of the vehicles, so that one of our biggest problems is people sit all day on the charging station. So we need to figure out a way to put in timers or to regulate the amount of time that people have. I don't know.
This is part, you heard it last week, this is part of the Hitachi initiative to connect, you know, the renewables with batteries and connect the batteries with cars. And they
Absolutely.
put them all together, and you have a great system. But we have like only 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay.
And I wanted to touch one more thing with you. It's a hard question. Can you deal with it?
I have no idea. Throw it at me and I'll try.
Okay, all of this needs politics.
Yes.
You know, it's like one of the reasons, for example, that electric cars haven't taken off the way we might have hoped is because the tax credit went away.
Right.
And there's nobody out there to incentivize. And the reality in the human conditions is we need leadership, we need incentivization, and when it goes away, either leadership or incentivization or whatever the elements of leadership are, then we tend to go
I
static.
think you're right. Incentivizing is the best method. I mean, that was the reason in Sustainability Partners, when we started doing our work, we did not focus on hitting people over the head with the doomsday scenario, although we gladly provided the information. but we showed people how they could improve their operations and improve their profits by employing sustainable practices. So incentivizing is key, and we do need to have a political will to make those investments, and sometimes that means really stepping out with leadership. And I just want to make sure we talk a little bit about the global scale as well, is that it's really important that we get buy-in on the framework for climate change, the UN framework for climate change, so that we move past the Kyoto Accords. We make sure that we're moving even beyond the Durban Accords. We need to get the United States and other, of course, China and India now, those three need to be the leaders as the greatest consumers of resources to sign those protocols and move forward. Right now, as I understand it, for the Paris Accord that's coming up, Christiana Figueres, who's providing phenomenal leadership, and I'm delighted that a woman has taken that stage. She mentioned recently in an interview that only 50 nations have signed, and she needs 144 to ratify, and they really need about all 190 to be at the table to be able to move the agenda, and that takes tremendous national leadership.
And a good memory. I spoke before of distraction.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Iran nuclear deal is on the front page. And there's all kinds of other things that come on the front page, and the front page is like a ticker tape. It keeps going into the future, but it can't remember the past very well.
That's right.
and the problem with the Accords and the leadership and showing people about the the threats and about the economy and about all the moral considerations.
That's right.
They're not on the ticker tape, and leadership, I think, is part of. It includes keeping them on the ticker tape. We said we were going to do this, so let's do this. Don't
Absolutely.
forget what we agreed to do.
Absolutely.
It's a social compact of sorts.
Well, and we do that in the voting booth.
Yes.
We need to hold our leaders accountable, and that's how we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure I give you this book.
Okay.
This is the Sustainability Partners, the Natras' second book, Dancing with the Tiger. And this is another set of case studies and with lessons learned from the first go-round. And these include working with Nike and Starbucks, Whistler Resort, and others that I think you'll find a very good read about how to incentivize and motivate people by demonstrating that sweet spot in the Venn diagram and how it benefits everyone
Dancing
involved.
with the Tiger, is that also?
Also available on Amazon.
Also available on Amazon and on your website.
Yeah.
Well, Kirsten, I would like you to come back. We haven't really touched the surface. We're just meeting each other here today.
I'm delighted.
And
Thank
I
you.
hope you can come back and dig down, drill down into these
I'd love
things and explain them to people and be forgive me, but a source for education.
Well, I hope I was helpful. There's so many more people out there doing great things and who know a lot more than me, but I enjoyed this time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll set it up.
Thank you.
That's Kirsten Turner, Kirsten Baumgart Turner, Sustainability Partners, Inc. And she's helped us understand whether sustainability is a myth and just how it's doing in Hawaii. But there's a long way to go to continue that conversation here on sustainability in Hawaii on ThinkTech Hawaii. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aloha.